Okay, so as it stands right now, there's a pretty decent gap between the critics and audience's score on Hunger Games on Rotten Tomatoes right now. I think the critics score right now is about like a 61, and the audience score is at about a 90. Just want to take the time to say, audiences, you know ball, or in this case, you know cinema. But either way, look, this movie was fucking fantastic. I am not. I mean, look, a 61 is not bad. 61 is not bad whatsoever. But I walked out of this movie literally trying to figure out what everybody else saw because I was I was in awe. I was completely astonished. I was speechless. I was baffled, befuddled, as Emma Mackey would say. Big Emma Mackey stan. But this thing was just fucking incredible. So, without further ado, guys, this is The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, or A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. It's a really long title, but either way, this is A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So, let's get on to the review. Hey guys, it's your guy in the chair here, and this is my review for Hunger Games, The Hunger Games, A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, starring Rachel Zegler, Viola Davis, Tom Blythe, Peter Dinklage, and was directed by Francis Lawrence. And our story follows the beginning of, honestly, I really thought this was the first annual Hunger Games, but it's actually the 10th annual Hunger Games. And basically what goes on here is the Hunger Games are quote-unquote dying off, as in just not a lot of people are invested, not a lot of people are intrigued, not a lot of people are watching. And so the game maker, played by Viola Davis, gets this idea to where, well, Viola Davis and Peter Dinklage, I should say, they're both the game makers in a sense, and they're basically getting these kids, high society kids, to mentor the candidates for this year, the 10th annual Hunger Games. And throughout that process, they also add some more ideas given to them by Tom Blythe's character, who is President Snow in Jennifer Lawrence's Hunger Games, the Jennifer Lawrence Hunger Game movies. And basically they are taking a bunch of different ideas from him and trying to make the Hunger Games a lot more intriguing by not only mentoring these kids, but adding a bunch of other things that lead up to what the Hunger Games are once we get to where we are in Jennifer Lawrence's story. But here, it's just the prequel to how the Hunger Games really became what they truly are by the time we were introduced to it in the future movies or the past movies, whatever. This is a prequel, so it is what it is. Best way to sum it up is basically we are watching a love story between two people from completely different worlds, as it normally is, and they are fighting for survival in a sense. They're both fighting for survival for completely different reasons, of course, but I'll just leave it at that. It's the best way to really sum up that plot. It's probably a messy way to sum up that plot, but it is what it is. It's the Hunger Games, and honestly, guys, this movie was so much better than I expected. Like, I was very excited for this movie because for me, I thought the trailers were really good. Once I saw Viola Davis and Peter Dinklage were the people behind making the Hunger Games, I was completely sold. I was like, I don't even really need much more from this. That was all I really needed for you to sell me on the fact that this is going to be a damn good movie, and it exceeded my expectations in so many ways. So I'm going to start with Rachel Zegler because she absolutely destroyed her role in all the best ways possible. I mean, she completely murdered it. First of all, I loved her Southern accent. At least it sounded like a Southern accent to me. It was an accent regardless, and it sounded kind of Southern-like, and I really enjoyed it. And this is my Southern accent, which I think is pretty good, but maybe you think it's pretty bad. So I'm going to switch back to my English accent. Well, it's not an accent, but my English voice. Anyway, Rachel Zegler absolutely just destroyed this role. I loved her character. First of all, well, I'm sorry, not first of all, because I already told you what first of all is, but I absolutely loved her singing in this film. I didn't necessarily do my research to know if that's her voice or if that's her singing throughout the film. Regardless, it was emotional, it was powerful, it was so devastating at times. I mean, the way she would deliver some lines in the song she was singing, you really feel the pain and the purpose behind all of those words in the song. She did an amazing job in this role. I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal. She was, can't call her a scene stealer because because it's basically her show to steal in the first place. She owns the screen in every single way possible. Rachel Zegler is an immensely, ridiculously talented star, and I really cannot wait to see her in more projects. Loved her in West Side Story. Shazam, I didn't hate Shazam as much as other people, but I mean, she did okay in that movie. I thought Shazam was kind of like quirky fun for the most part, but Rachel Zegler is really stamping her name to be an absolute star in Hollywood because I was blown away by her performance. I truly think she deserves a nomination, and maybe I'm reaching with that, but if she doesn't get an Oscar nom, I at least hope she is in consideration. I really hope this performance of hers is not overlooked because she absolutely just killed it. From beginning to end, this girl was absolutely a show. I think a showstopper is the right term. She completely just you're just drawn to her every time, and just her delivery of lines, the delivery of like the song she's singing, everything is just given with so much purpose and so much emotion. You really feel everything her character has to deliver, and I loved her character's morals and values, but I'll get to that a little later because that's a part of the storytelling and a lot of these characters' morals and values. Second character that blew me away, Tom Blythe. I don't think I've ever seen a Tom Blythe movie. I think this is the first time I'm ever seeing this kid on screen, but for him playing President Snow, absolutely ridiculous. This kid had to present so many conflicting emotions, so many different just an array of feelings that he was having because he's literally torn. This is a character who is torn between two worlds. He is torn between the high class society world that he wants to get his family's name back up in the ranks with, and then at the same time he falls for this girl who shows him what the actual world outside of his high class society world that he's trying to get back up in. He's actually introduced to her world, and it's just tearing him completely apart because he has to make decisions throughout the film that put him in position to get back to where his social status wants, or where he wants his social status to be, but then at the same time he just keeps coming back to this girl, and she's showing him so many different ways to honestly just live life and be joyful about it and appreciate what life is. Tom Blythe really did a phenomenal job as I'm gonna just keep calling him President Snow because I think his name was Cornelius. But I'm not 100% sure. It was something close to Cornelius. If it's not, it could have just been Cornelius, and I'm just completely forgetting that. But it was something with corn. It started with corn. It's something of that nature. But I'm just gonna call him President Snow because we all know that's who he becomes, and that's not even that. That's we all know that's who he is. And that's the character he's portraying. But one thing I do appreciate this movie for is they never try to paint President Snow, at least in my opinion, they never tried to paint President Snow as somebody you can empathize with and root for, quote unquote, because we all know who this guy becomes. We all know in the Jennifer Lawrence Hunger Games how evil this guy is, how he's literally hell-bent on making the games continue, how he likes to control and manipulate people. And this story here really paints the picture as to why. And I really appreciate the movie for not trying to paint him as somebody we should root for, because he's not really somebody we should be rooting for. He's just someone who was presented two different paths of life and chose one over the other. And I mean, that's what was so important about Rachel Zegler's morals and values, because her whole thing was that there is good in people. It's just things in life happen to where they can turn us evil, and we make the decision of whether or not we want to go down that path or not. And that's why I absolutely love both of their characters so much. Tom Blythe did an amazing job. Like truly, the performances in this movie are really what make the entire film go round. That and the brilliant writing and the storytelling, but I'll get to that, like I said, in a second. But the performances in this movie are really what make the entire movie just work to perfection. I absolutely adored the performances in this movie. Viola Davis and Peter Dinklage, I mean, come on. Do I really duh, of course they did a great job in the movie. First of all, or I keep saying first of all, but it's okay. Look, Viola Davis, I loved her costume design, loved the hair and makeup. I think whoever did the hair and makeup and the costume designing for this film, they should 100% get nominated. And also Tom Blythe. Tom Blythe and Rachel Zegler, in my opinion, 100% deserve nominations for this film because they gave absolutely riveting performances. I think that they absolutely should be nominated, but if they're not, I am going to be very disappointed. I'm not going to lie to you, but whoever does get nominated over them, they better have done a damn good job. But look, The hair and costume and makeup in this movie is phenomenal. They do a great job with that. The actual clothes that they are wearing mean something to the characters, and they mean something to the story. Like Rachel Zegler, the dress that she has on throughout a very pivotal, a very big portion of the film, the dress that she has on belongs to her mom, and so that's a very pivotal piece to her character. Viola Davis's dress and just her crazy hair and everything really, and her eyes, they really bring out the evilness in the character and just how animated she is. And then, Peter Dinklage just wearing his priest outfit, boy just out there looking too swaggy. But I really enjoyed a lot about this movie that I really did not expect to. Just how brilliantly they really told the story of not only like how the Hunger Games became what they were, like once we see them in the Jennifer Lawrence films, but honestly the purpose of the Hunger Games in general. And I'm talking about the purpose to each societal class, like not just what it means to the districts and to the poor and to the people who are poor and just not in the high class, but also what it means to the high class people. And it's all just told so brilliantly. Another actor that that I completely have to shout out. His name is, I want to get this right, Josh Andres Rivera. Now, that kid was a scene stealer. That kid was absolutely magnificent in this film. I mean, I absolutely loved his character. He was a guy who was he was from the high society social class, but then he was somebody who really empathized with the people from the districts and realized that the Hunger Games are just completely evil and this doesn't need to happen. And I loved the back and forth between Tom Blythe's character, President Snow, and Josh Andrews Rivera's character, how Snow's character was really conflicted, again, torn between two worlds about how this kid is really his friend, but this kid, he can't really side with everything the kid is doing because he's really on the district side, I should say. He's really on the side of the district people. And Tom Blythe, if he wants to get where he wants to go, which at the time really wasn't, at president status, he just wanted his family's name back up in the ranks because his dad was once a great general. So he really just wanted his family's name to have respect again, not necessarily focused on the presidential status of that, but he really could not side with everything that Rivera's character was doing in the film. And it was just every decision that Blythe had to make was either a selfish one or a selfless one. And just seeing him go back and forth between those narratives and be very torn between just, am I making the right decision? Am I doing the right things? It was just so amazing. Like, I absolutely adored all of that. And then another character I want to shout out, Hunter Schafer. She did a phenomenal job. I thought she was really good in the film. She delivered one of my favorite, and it was a very simple but a very powerful line. Can't necessarily get into what it was, but she delivered one of my favorite lines in the film. It was so simple, yet so brilliant and so pivotal, so powerful, and that's just an testament to the writing in this film. The writing in this film is phenomenal. Like I said, you're really here for the performances and the storytelling and just how the Hunger Games came to be. And I'm talking about the actual purpose of them all and how, and another thing I really enjoyed about this movie is how they were adding, this is a Hunger Games where they were adding a lot of things into it and some stuff was still new. And while the actual Hunger Games is going on, they kind of show like, okay, a lot of this stuff is not really working. We definitely need to, get better for this for next year, if there is a next year. Because when we find them in the beginning of the film, when we find them in the beginning of the film, the Hunger Games is almost like teetering to really not existing. Like, they really need a power play to shift to get the Hunger Games to be more exciting and more, get more people watching. And honestly, without even knowing it, President Tom Blythe's character, Snow, he was feeding into it. He was honestly giving them so much more that made the Hunger Games, like I said, what they are once we get caught up to Jennifer Lawrence's Hunger Games. And the storytelling and the writing in this movie is beautiful. I'll say this, I didn't know the movie was 2 hours and 37 minutes. And while I did feel like towards the end it was dragging just a little bit, once we got to the end of the film and really where Snow's character truly, ends up, I really appreciated what we were being shown in the parts that I felt like were dragging, because it really fleshed out the characters more. This is a character piece. This is something that is truly highlighting how just messed up this world is. And there's so many different parallels to what the Hunger Games actually mean as far as enslavement and social classes and keeping people in their quote unquote place. And it's ridiculous. And it's so nice to actually see it from different points of view and different perspectives. They do such an amazing job with that. I'll say this. As far as what, I'm not going to say I didn't like this part about the film, but the weakest part in the movie for me was the Hunger Games themselves. And that's because one, like they're still adding a bunch of stuff, and it's like the 10th annual Hunger Games, so it hasn't been going on for too long, and it's really, there's just not a lot of like cool action or entertainment value there. So the Hunger Games part in the movie for me was the weakest of the three that we've gotten. The one in the first Hunger Games, of course, and then Catching Fire, which Catching Fire's Hunger Games it was the best one by far. That was the best Hunger Games we've ever seen. But yeah, the Hunger Games portion of this film was definitely the weakest of it. But to the film's testament, this film isn't really about, I mean, yes, Hunger Games is in the title, but it's more so about the purpose of them and why they exist and what is it that the Hunger Games does to each societal class, which honestly, yes, is highlighted to an extent in the previous Hunger Game. It's not a trilogy, but the previous Hunger Game movies. But here it's more highlighted and more focused on the actual point of why they exist and the purpose of them, and how this character Cornelius Snow, or President Snow, is just completely affected by both worlds in this case. And I truly had a spectacular time in this film. Like, I had so much fun, to an extent, because this is a much darker tone and a much darker look at the Hunger Games, more darker than the previous film showed. But this is truly something where characters and character development and storytelling and writing and all that can truly be appreciated here, because they just did an absolutely brilliant job. Everybody, the cast and crew, like I said, the performances were knockout. I had so much fun in this film. I really adored it so much. I have to see this movie again, and this is definitely one of my favorite films of the year. I'm praying it makes my top 10. Look, this year for movies in general has just been ridiculous. I'm praying this movie makes my top 10, but for now, for all those reasons and so many more, guys, I'm going to give Hunger Games: A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes a 4.25 out of 5 stars. All right, guys, so Hunger Games, have you seen it? What did you think about it? Look, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, guys. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, all that stuff, and so much more, guys. Look, this is your guy in the chair. More content coming to you soon.